Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga Show. We are back a lot sooner than we were thinking. Literally, we were just talking about how the end of the season is upon us last evening. We're back to talk about huge news in the Bundesliga, in the Bundesrepublic, as Vincent Kompany is hired as FC Bayern Munich head coach on a contract until June 30th, 2027. Mark, we're just going to react to this very quickly because it's massive news, and we were saying that we'd react to stuff like this over the summer, and it's massive. For Bayern, such a big club and such a big call. So we're just going to run through this, right now, go through some pros and cons of the hiring of Vincent Kompany. It's a really interesting one. We're going to try and flip it both ways and both have our own say. So, Mark, we're going to kickstart with just what we feel are the risky elements of this, because there's going to be a lot of underwhelmed individuals from the Bayern fan base and from people across the world. So, do you want to kick us off? What you feel is at risk? What's at play for Bayern and Kompany himself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I mean, it's just a massive call, isn't it? Nobody expected this a few weeks ago. It just kind of came out of the blue, round about this time last week. And a lot of people were obviously skeptical early doors. But I mean, the news has been officially declared today that Vincent Kompany will be the manager. But yeah, I've got to be honest. My initial thoughts are probably more skeptical rather than positive. In truth, I mean, there's already been jibes on the BBC and on social media that it's the eighth choice, effectively. That's probably the first thing we've got to mention. The likes of Nagelsmann, Ranić, obviously Xabi Alonso, who is the main choice, have all turned the job down, amongst other guys, too. The likes of Unai Emery, De Zerbi were also linked. So been so many men that have been turned down, and obviously the Burnley man, relegated after only 5 wins out of 38 games with a 13% win rate, by the way, in the Premier League this season, is now the manager of one of the top 5 clubs in Europe. So, I mean, it's an absolutely massive call. I think, the first big negative you got to look at is his record, basically. I mean, obviously, his first job was actually Anderlecht. A lot of people forget that he did have a couple of years at Anderlecht, round about the COVID period as well. He had a win rate of 46% there, but you've got to remember that Anderlecht is like traditionally one of the powerhouses in Belgian football, and he only guided them to, I think the first season they were well down in the bottom half, actually, so they were really struggling, before he eventually carried them up to mid-table. And the second season was more successful in the end. He got them in, So it wasn't all bad there, but maybe a bit of surprise at the time when he was appointed as Burnley manager, obviously, as well, in 2022 in June, around about 2 years ago exactly. And obviously the first season was nothing but superb, basically. We shall talk about a bit more on the cons, but obviously his Premier League record, 5 wins out of 38 games. 24 defeats for a team that most people thought would have a chance of staying up, to be honest, the way they played in the Championship. A team that had a bit of money. I think they spent over 100 million euros as well in the transfer window. So it's not like they didn't spend anything. He did lose a lot of players from that Burnley side. Let's not forget that as well. The likes of Teller left from the promoted side. Some other good players too.
As well, maybe.
Yeah, Maatsen as well. Let's not forget that as well. Yeah, Maatsen and Teller both played in that Burnley side that won the Championship. But yeah, I mean, obviously his inexperience. A man who's only 4 years into his managerial career. It's a big call. It's a big risk for him. Rory, what do you think? Anything I've missed about the risks?
Yeah, so from a risk point of view, I think for him personally, like he's quoted a few things which I picked up on. One of which saying, how he wants to build a team, and every manager would rightly want to do that, but Kompany won't have time to do it. Bayern want results. This is not a Bayern side that have just come off yet another Bundesliga win and they're just changing things up and they're already successful. They're just coming off an absolute battering of the season. They did well in Europe, but Bundesliga-wise, they came third, lowest that they'd ever come for a long time, below Stuttgart. Obviously, out of the cup very early doors. Kompany's coming into a league that is even more competitive than it ever has been. if Alonso stays put with Leverkusen, they're only getting better. They're already looking like signing more players to add to their depth. So he's got it all to do. He's got a lot of decisions to make. What decision he'll be allowed to make are another thing. The old boys club, what does he do with Neuer, Muller, Goretzka, Kimmich, all those sort of players? It's really interesting. I think, like you say, there's a lot of skepticism, if I can say the word, out there. It's a risk, as quite a lot of people are already saying in the chat whilst we're kind of live. So yeah, the highest of expectations, it's Bayern. He has to win straight from the off. His managerial win record has to pop off straight away. So yeah, really interesting. If we're to turn it around a little bit, just for the last few minutes that we're live, just to react to this, Mark, and try and put a positive spin on it for Bayern fans and the company itself, I'll kind of give a few things that I have noticed. Well, obviously the fact that Kompany's not long retired from the game, so he knows the modern day approach. He's a pupil of Pep Guardiola, the best modern day football manager out there. So he's got that kind of background, which is obviously something that went his way. I'm pretty sure Bayern representatives spoke to Pep Guardiola as well about him, so that kind of makes sense. I think the fact as well that he is freshly retired, but I think he'll have the respect of the Bayern players, the older guard, because of what he achieved in his career as well. And sometimes it can go either way, but I think he'll have that as well. So I think that's something that he'll have his way. And I mean, this is maybe not as much of a positive, but like you say, he was maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th choice, 8th choice, whatever. But is he then the best of a bad bunch? And he'll likely be more of a yes man. He'll conform to the way that Bayern want him to play his bosses. He'll probably have less of a say in regards to transfers because, we know that Max Eberl and Freund will likely have most of the say in that. So it's really interesting. Mark, what do you think from a positive outlook for Bayern that we can pick out just to kind of finish off this really, really interesting news and an interesting hire from Bayern?
Yeah, I think for me it was more to do with the style of play as well. It's well known that Kompany likes to play good football, basically high possession, high octane attacking football, which obviously he probably learned after doing a lot of his apprenticeship under Pep Guardiola as well. Obviously towards the end of his career, I think Dave mentioned well in the chat as well the fact that Burnley was always known as a long ball pub football team really for most of the time under Sean Dyche, and he did quickly turn them around into they were a beautiful team to watch. Even in the Premier League at times last season, they played good football, but they just didn't have the players. But the difference is at Bayern Munich, he will have the players. That's the thing. And despite the fact that Bayern have obviously got issues as well behind the scenes, with some of the players potentially. So he's not really going into a happy camp in general. But at the end of the day, he has much better players than at Burnley. And I think they will definitely suit his style of football better. I also feel as though, the pressure's off a little bit. I would go as crazy as it sounds. I feel as though the expectations will be low in my eyes as well. I think from what I've heard from Bayern fans over here in Germany, they are mixed on the appointment. Some people think it's a very it's one for the future and they've got to give him time. And Bayern have already come out and said they are willing to give him time as well. So let's not forget that. But other people are underwhelmed, as you would be imagined. When you link with the likes of Xabi Alonso, Nagelsmann returning, even Hansi Flick, and you end up with basically a failed Premier League manager, really. You can understand why there is some underwhelming over there. But really looking forward to seeing how he does. It is going to be really interesting. Obviously, we're going to be covering it all the way, aren't we, Rory? But it's going to be really interesting next season to see how Kompany does.
Yep, completely agree. We'll watch you with great interest. Also, be interesting to see how much prep time he gets with the Euros and players available or not. So maybe another thing that he'll have to work with their Kompany. But anyhow, we just popped on, wanted to react to this. Thank you to everyone that's already, jumped in. Loads of interesting points and comments. If you're a Bayern fan and, you're watching this subsequently, let us know what you think. Good risk, bad gamble. It's certainly an interesting point. So, let us know your thoughts. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And Mark, do you want to just quickly close up?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you around for the next big piece of news, and see you then, guys.